James had always lived a quiet life. He was an engineer on a lonely space station that orbited a dying planet. His days were filled with endless repairs, fixing broken pipes and damaged circuits. Nights were even worse, silent, cold and empty. He had no friends, no family left. He was just another human lost in the vast galaxy. One evening, after finishing his shift, James walked through the market district of the station. The air was heavy with strange smells, spices from distant worlds, the metallic scent of alien machinery, and the faint odor of desperation. Merchants shouted, trying to sell rare crystals, illegal tech, and even people. James hated this part of the galaxy. Slavery was still legal on some worlds, and the black market trade thrived here. He usually avoided looking. But that night, something caught his eye. Inside a dimly lit cage sat a small, delicate figure. Her skin was soft blue, almost glowing under the weak light. Her hair shimmered like silver threads, flowing gently even though there was no wind. She wasn't crying. She wasn't afraid. She was smiling. For a moment, James froze. He expected to see fear or sadness in her face. But instead, her silver eyes were calm and warm, like moonlight on still water. She looked directly at him, and for some reason, it felt like she was waiting for him. The alien trader noticed James staring. "You have good taste, human," the man sneered, his sharp teeth glinting. "She's rare Illyrio. They don't survive long outside their homeworld. But this one, she's strong, obedient, and beautiful." James felt a knot in his stomach. Didn't want to be part of this. Wasn't the type to own another. Being but the girl, no. The woman kept looking at him, her smile soft but full of something he couldn't name. Hope? Relief? "Why is she smiling?" James asked quietly. The trader shrugged. "She's happy someone is looking at her. These creatures, they're born to serve. It's their nature." James didn't believe that. But his chest tightened as he saw other buyers passing by, their cold eyes calculating her value like she was an object. He imagined what kind of person might take her as someone cruel, careless, or worse. Before he realized what he was doing, James spoke. "I'll take her." The trader's grin widened. "Good choice. 2,000 credits. James hesitated only for a moment. It was almost all his savings, but he transferred the credits. In return, he was given a simple collar, key and a data chip with her ownership papers. The trader opened the cage. The girl stepped out gracefully. She was taller than he expected, slender but strong. When she stood before him, she lowered her head slightly. A gesture of respect. Or was it gratitude? "My name is Lyra," she said softly. Roar. Her voice was like music, calm and soothing. James didn't know how to respond. I'm James." Lyra looked up at him with those glowing silver eyes and smiled again. "Thank you for choosing me." Her words felt strange. She wasn't scared. She wasn't begging for freedom. She sounded truly happy as they walked away from the market. James kept glancing at her. She stayed close to him, her steps light and quiet. There was no fear in her movements, only a strange sense of peace. But deep inside, James felt uneasy. Why would someone in chains be smiling? Why would someone sold like an object thank their buyer? He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of something far bigger than a simple purchase. James led Lyra through the narrow corridors of the station. The metallic walls echoed with distant footsteps and faint humming from the power cores. He could feel the weight of what he had just done. He had bought someone, a living being. But when he looked at Lyra walking beside him, she didn't look like someone in pain. She moved gracefully, her silver hair catching the dim light like strands of starlight. Her glowing eyes scanned everything around her, curious yet calm. Finally, they reached his cabin. It was small and plain, just a single bed, a desk with scattered tools, and a window overlooking the endless dark of space. He pushed the door open and stepped aside. Lyra paused at the entrance, her eyes softening. "It's quiet here," she whispered. James nodded awkwardly. "Yeah, not much company around." She stepped inside, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. She touched the edge of the bed, the smooth surface of the desk, and then turned to him with a gentle smile. "It feels safe." Those words caught him off guard. Safe. This tiny cabin was nothing special. But the way she said it, like it was, the first time she had felt peace in a long time, made his chest tighten. He cleared his throat. "You must be hungry. Or tired." Lyra tilted her head slightly, a little of both. James rummaged through his storage unit and pulled out some basic rations. Nothing fancy, just nutrient bars and purified water. He placed them on the desk. Unsure if it was enough. "I'm sorry, it's all I have right now. I wasn't expecting a guest." She picked up the food carefully and tasted it. To his surprise, she smiled again. "It's warm." "Thank you." Her kindness unsettled him. She wasn't acting like someone forced into servitude. She didn't seem afraid. In fact, she looked relieved. James sat on the edge of the bed while she ate. His mind raced with questions. Why was she smiling in that cage? Why did she look at me like she already knew me? Finally, he asked softly, "Lyra, were you scared? Back there in the market?" She paused, her silver eyes meeting his. "No," she said simply. "I was waiting for someone like you." James blinked. "You don't even know me." Lyra's smile grew faint but sincere. "I didn't need to. I saw your eyes. You didn't look at me like an object. You looked at me like I was alive." Her words left him silent. He didn't know what to say. After eating, she curled up on the floor near the window, gazing at the stars. James frowned. "You can take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor." Lyra shook her head gently. "No, you're tired.
Yeah.
You've given me enough already." "This isn't right," James muttered. "I didn't buy you too." He stopped, realizing how wrong it sounded. I mean, I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything." Lyra turned her head toward him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "But I want to stay. I chose this. James didn't understand. How could someone choose to belong to another? As the hours passed, the station grew silent. James lay awake on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Lyra sat quietly by the window, humming a soft melody in a language he didn't know. Something about her presence filled the empty room with warmth he hadn't felt in years. But beneath that warmth was a mystery he couldn't ignore. Why was she truly happy to be here? The next morning, James woke up to the soft sound of humming. For a moment, he thought it was a dream. But when he opened his eyes, he saw Lyra by the window, her silver hair catching the pale light of the nearby stars. She was cleaning the small cabin, quietly and carefully, like she had always belonged there. James sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You don't have to do that," he said. Lyra turned to him with a gentle smile. "I want to. Makes me happy." Those words struck him again. Happy. She was sold in a cage just yesterday. How could she find happiness so easily? After a quick breakfast, they sat together at the small desk. James finally gathered the courage to ask what had been haunting his mind since he saw her. "Lyra." He began softly, "Where are you from? Why were you in that market?" Lyra's smile faded just a little, replaced by a look of quiet sadness. "I come from a planet called Lyria Prime," she said slowly. "It was once beautiful, filled with endless oceans and crystal skies. But now, it is dying." James leaned forward, listening carefully. "My people were peaceful," she continued. "We never learned to fight. We believed in harmony and helping each other. But the galaxy is not kind to the weak. Raiders came. They burned our cities. They took many of us as slaves. Some were sold. Others," her voice faltered, but she forced a calm breath. "Others didn't survive." James felt a deep ache in his chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes shining but steady. "Don't be sorry for me. I am alive." "That is enough." He shook his head. "But you were trapped in that cage. Should have been angry, afraid, not smiling." She gave him a small, sad smile. "I was smiling because I knew my fate could have been worse. In the market, there are two kinds of buyers. It's those who are cruel and those who have a heart. I saw your face, James. I saw kindness in your eyes. That was why I smiled. James felt his throat tighten. He wasn't sure what to say. He never thought of himself as a kind man, just lonely. Just tired, Lyra continued, her voice soft but steady. Being bought is not the worst thing for someone like me. Being abandoned, being forgotten, that is worse. On Lyria Prime, when the raiders came, I lost everything. My family, my home, all gone. So when I was taken, I prayed. That if someone bought me, it would be someone who would treat me like a person. She placed her hand gently over his. And then you came. James froze. Her touch was warm, almost too warm. Her words felt heavy, like they carried years of pain, but also a strange kind of hope. He whispered almost to himself, "But you're free now. You don't have to stay here. You can leave if you want." Lyra tilted her head, her silver hair shimmering. "Leave? And go where? Back to a dead planet? Back to the market?" She shook her head slowly. "No, James. Here with you, I am safe. For the first time in many years, I can breathe without fear." James swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to tell her this wasn't right. But the truth was, she wasn't a prisoner anymore. She wasn't chained. She chose to stay. That night, as Lyra rested peacefully, James sat awake, staring at the small data chip the trader had given him. It said she was his property. But after hearing her story, he realized something important. She wasn't his property. She was a survivor. And maybe she was more human than anyone he had ever met. For the first time in years, James felt a spark of purpose. Maybe he couldn't save her world, but he could make sure she was never hurt again. Days slowly turned into weeks, and life on the station began to feel different for James. Before Lyra, his cabin had been silent and cold. Now, it felt alive. She would hum soft melodies while tidying the small room. She would ask gentle questions about human life, curious about even the smallest things. Like why humans drank bitter coffee, or why they wore shoes indoors. James found himself smiling more often, something he hadn't done in years. But deep inside, there was still a strange weight on his heart. He had saved her from one kind of prison, but wasn't she still in another? One evening, after a long day of repairing the station's failing oxygen filters, James came back exhausted. Lyra was waiting for him with a cup of warm tea. She had learned how to make it just the way he liked. "You shouldn't do so much," he told her. "You don't owe me anything." Lyra placed the cup in his hands and sat across from him. "Don't do it because I owe you," she said softly. "I do it because it makes me happy to see you at peace." Her words made his chest tighten. He had never met someone who spoke with such honesty, without expecting anything in return. That night they sat by the window, watching distant stars drift by. James finally broke the silence. "Lyra, if you wanted to leave, I wouldn't stop. I could help you find another home, somewhere safe." She turned to him, her glowing eyes calm. "And what would I find there? Strangers' kindness may not last. But here, I have already found what I need." James looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Lyra's voice was quiet but steady. "I found a place where I am not treated as a thing. A place where I am seen. That is all I ever wanted." For a long moment, James couldn't speak. He had always thought of himself as a simple man, unimportant in the vast galaxy. But to her, his small kindness meant everything. In the days that followed, Lyra began to help with his work. She learned how to fix broken circuits, how to seal air leaks, and even how to navigate the station's complex control panels. She was quick, careful, and surprisingly skilled. "You're better at this than me," James joked one day, handing her a tool. Lyra smiled. "On Lyria Prime, I studied healing and repair. Our people believed everything machines, bodies even. Hearts could be fixed with patience." James stared at her, realizing she wasn't just a fragile survivor. She was strong in ways he couldn't fully understand. One afternoon, while repairing an external panel together, they heard shouting in the distance. A group of rough-looking men were arguing near the docking bay. Lyra's expression darkened, her usual calm replaced by quiet tension. "Those men," she whispered. "They were in the market. They used to transport my people." James felt anger rise in his chest. He wanted to confront them, but Lyra touched his arm gently. "Don't," she said softly. "It will only bring more trouble. I am safe. Now, that is enough." But James didn't feel it was enough. He hated the thought that the ones who hurt her still walked free. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching Lyra sleep peacefully. He thought about everything she had lost and everything she had endured. She was smiling now, but how many nights had she cried in silence before they met? James made himself a silent promise. He would protect her, not because he bought her, not because he felt guilty, but because she deserved more than just survival. She deserved a real life, with freedom and peace. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to realize that he needed her, just as much as she needed him. James woke early that morning, his mind heavy with thoughts he couldn't shake away. He sat at his desk, staring at the small data chip that marked Lyra as his property. The very word felt wrong. She was not an object. She was not something to be owned. When Lyra awoke, she greeted him with her usual soft smile. She had braided her silver hair neatly, and her glowing eyes held the same calm warmth he had grown used to. She prepared a small breakfast, humming a tune from her homeworld. But today, James couldn't just smile back, couldn't pretend everything was fine. "Lyra," he said quietly. She turned toward him, tilting her head. "Yes," he held up. "The data chip. I don't want this anymore." Her expression softened, curious but not alarmed. "What do you mean?" James took a deep breath. "This chip says you belong to me. It says you're mine to command. But that's not who I am. I can't keep you like this. It's not right." Lyra walked closer, her steps slow and silent. "James," he continued before she could speak, "I can remove the ownership tag. I can help you find a transport ship to another world somewhere. Safe. You could start over. You'd be free." For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. Her glowing silver eyes searched his face, like she was reading the truth behind his words. Finally, she asked softly, "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" James hesitated. His heart ached at the thought of her going. But he couldn't let his own feelings trap her. "What I want doesn't matter. What matters is what's right for you. You deserve freedom, Lyra." Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. She stepped even closer until she stood just a breath away from him. "James, I am free." He blinked, confused. "But you're still here. You still wear the mark that says you're mine." Lyra shook her head gently. "No, I stay because I choose to. That mark, that paper, they mean nothing to me. Matters is how you see me. And you have never treated me like a thing. You treat me like a person. That is freedom." James felt his throat tighten. He wanted to argue, to tell her she didn't understand, but her calm, steady gaze silenced him. Lyra reached out and gently took his hand in hers. Her touch was warm, soft, yet strong. "Do you know what it feels like, to have no place in the universe? To have no one who cares if you live or die?" Her voice trembled slightly, though her expression remained calm. "That is what I felt before, but here with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. It is more freedom than I have ever known." James looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he truly understood. Freedom wasn't just about running away or being alone. For Lyra, freedom was about being accepted, about finding a place where she wasn't hunted, hurt, or forgotten. "Still," he whispered, "I don't want you to feel like you owe me your life." Lyra shook her head. "I don't owe you. One choose. You." The words hit him like a soft wave, filling the quiet room with something he couldn't describe, something gentle, yet powerful. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was warm. That night, they shared a simple meal and sat by the window again. Lyra rested her head lightly on his shoulder, watching the endless stars. James didn't speak. He didn't need to. In that moment, he realized something important. He hadn't rescued her to own her. He had rescued her because it was the right thing to do. And in choosing to stay, she had given him something far more valuable than gratitude. She had given him trust. For the first time in years, James didn't feel alone. The station had been quiet for weeks, almost too quiet. Life had settled into a peaceful routine for James and Lyra. She helped him with small repairs, and he taught her more about human life stories of old Earth, the meaning of simple things, like laughter and friendship. But peace never lasted long in the outer zones. It began with a faint alarm. At first, James thought it was just another technical fault. But then the announcement came through the speaker's unregistered ships. Detected. Possible raider incursion. All civilians secure your quarters. James felt his stomach tighten. Raiders. The same kind who had destroyed Lyra's world. He looked at her. She was calm, but her glowing eyes dimmed slightly. It's them. She whispered. Stay here, James said firmly. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. Lyra shook her head gently. No, I'm not hiding. Lyra, this is serious, he insisted. They're dangerous. Their voice was soft, but it carried strength. I know who they are, and I know what they do. I won't run from them again. Before James could argue, the station shuddered, as if struck by a massive force. The lights flickered, and a distant explosion echoed through the metal walls. Grabbed his toolkit more for comfort than defense and moved toward the door. Lyra followed silently, her steps graceful but firm. The corridor outside was filled with panic. Civilians rushed toward the secure sectors, while armed station guards scrambled to respond. Through the narrow windows, James saw the raider ships, docking, the same kind of ships that once stole Lyra's people. James turned to her. We have to move to the safe zone. But Lyra didn't move. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment, like she was remembering something deep inside her. When she opened them again, there was a quiet fire in her gaze. I can help, she said. You don't have to, James replied quickly. It's too dangerous. Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm. I have lived in fear before. I won't live in it again. Before he could respond, the sound of heavy boots filled the corridor. 2 raiders appeared, their armor scratched and marked with cruel symbols. They carried shock rifles and moved with predatory confidence. James froze. He had no weapon, no plan. He instinctively moved in front of Lyra, trying to shield her. But Lyra stepped forward. The raiders saw her and grinned. Well, look what we have here, one of them sneered. Astray Lyriel didn't think any of you were still alive. Lyra's expression didn't change. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Leave the station now. The raiders laughed. Or what? And then something unexpected happened. Lyra raised her hands slowly. Faint, shimmering glow spread from her fingers, like soft silver light bending in the air. The corridor seemed to hum for a moment, and the raiders froze mid-step, their weapons slipping from their hands. Their eyes widened in confusion as if an invisible weight held them still. James stared in shock. He had never seen Lyra like this. Your violence ends here, she said quietly. The raiders struggled, but their bodies refused to move. One by one, they collapsed unconscious but unharmed. Lyra lowered her hand, and the glow faded. James stepped closer, his heart pounding. Lyra, what was that? She looked at him, her expression soft again. On Lyria Prime, we were healers. But healing isn't only for the body. We could calm pain, even silence anger. James was speechless. All this time she had hidden this ability. She wasn't helpless. She had chosen peace, even when she had the power to fight. More raiders echoed in the distance. Lyra turned to James. We must go. I can't stop them all, but I can protect you. They moved quickly through the corridors, avoiding the chaos. As the station guards pushed back against the intruders, James kept glancing at her, still trying to understand what he had just witnessed. By the time they reached the safe zone, the alarms had shifted. The raiders were retreating. The station would survive. As the noise faded, James finally spoke. You saved me. You saved everyone in that corridor. Lyra smiled faintly. Only did what I could. I told you I'd choose this." For the first time, James saw her not just as a survivor, but as someone far stronger than he could ever imagine. The station slowly returned to normal after the raid. The damaged corridors were repaired, the alarms stopped, and the traders reopened their stalls. But for James, nothing felt the same. He kept thinking about what he had seen Lyra standing, calm in front of armed raiders, her soft glow stopping their violence without harm. She was not helpless. She was not just a survivor. She was something more, something extraordinary. In the days that followed, whispers spread through the station. People spoke of a mysterious alien woman who saved lives without firing a single shot. Some feared her. Some were curious. But Lyra stayed quiet, never boasting about what she had done. She simply helped James with his work as if nothing had changed. One evening, as they sat by the window, watching the stars drift by, James finally spoke what had been in his heart. "You don't belong here," he said softly. Lyra turned to him, her glowing silver eyes calm. "Why do you say that? Station? It's just a place to survive? You deserve more than survival. You deserve a life, a future." Lyra smiled gently. "Where would that future be? My planet is gone. My people are scattered. I've nowhere else." James hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Then come with me. Let's leave this station, then go somewhere new, find a quiet planet, build a home, not as owner and companion, but as equals." For a moment, Lyra said nothing. She just looked at him, her expression soft but unreadable. Then she asked, "Is that what you truly want? To leave everything you know behind?" James nodded slowly. "I've been alone for so long, Lyra, but when you came, I realized I wasn't really living. I was just existing. You changed that. I don't want to go back to the way things were." Lyra's faint smile warmed, like starlight breaking through clouds. "Then I choose to go with you." The decision was made. They gathered what little. They had James's tools, some supplies, and Lyra's only possession, a small crystal pendant from her homeworld. He sold his cabin rights and bought passage on a small transport ship bound for the outer colonies. Far from the chaos of raiders and markets, as the ship departed, James watched the station shrink into the distance. For years, it had been his prison, even if he never realized it. Now, for the first time, he felt free. Lyra stood beside him, her silver hair shimmering in the soft cabin lights. She rested her hand gently on the window. "This is strange," she said softly. "I have left many places before, but this time doesn't feel like running away. It feels like walking toward something." James smiled. "It's because you're not running alone anymore." The journey was quiet and peaceful. They talked for hours about dreams, about the life they wanted to build. Lyra described the oceans of her homeworld, how the waters glowed under 2 moons. James told her about Earth, about green forests and blue skies she had never seen. When the ship finally reached a small, touched colony world, they stepped out together. The air was clean, the sky wide and endless. It wasn't Lyria Prime, and it wasn't Earth, but it was theirs now. They built a small shelter near a river. Lyra planted flowers she remembered from her childhood. James repaired old farming machines to make the soil ready for crops. Slowly, piece by piece, they created a new home not as owner and alien, but as partners. One evening, as the twin suns set, painting the sky in colors of gold and violet, James sat with Lyra by the water. She leaned her head gently on his shoulder, her glowing eyes reflecting the fading light. "I never thought I would feel peace again," she whispered. James looked at her and smiled softly. "Me neither." And for the first time in both their lives, they truly felt free, not because they escaped the past, because they had chosen each other. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly. But now, the galaxy didn't feel so cold anymore.